All right, let's get right into it. We are live. We are live. We're live on all platforms. We're live on Facebook. We're live on YouTube. We're live on Instagram. We're live on Twitch. We are live. Before we get started, can you guys hear me? I'm going to need to know if you guys can hear me and where you're watching from. This has been one of those days. So we're still going live as always, but there is a bit of a delay in getting to you guys. So we want to make sure you guys can hear me. There's been some technical difficulties. Just got off the phone with one of my social media managers. And so just want to make sure that you guys can hear me. And I know where you guys are watching from. So where are you guys watching from, and can you guys hear me? Getting messages. We're getting messages. Getting messages from social media managers, but they are not on the live. Can you guys hear me? I know last week was an interesting one. We got some interesting feedback last week. There was some folks that were a bit disturbed last week. There was some questions about a number of different things. People had questions, people had comments, people had concerns. Bello Cello, or is it Beo Cheo, is watching from Milwaukee. What's up? What's up from Milwaukee? So I still cannot go live on my Authentic African Instagram page. Excuse me. It has been, sorry, but it has been now, what are we saying, 6 months? 6 months, 5 months since I've been able to go live on this platform. It's really interesting that they're not allowing me to go live. I can do everything else, but I can't go live. It still says I'm ineligible. The account is ineligible to go live. Don't know what that is and why that is. And it's unfortunate because obviously there's a large number of folks from Instagram who are following the channel and want to be involved in these discussions. And unfortunately, we can't do that. So Sharon Goodman says, good evening from New Jersey. Bello saying, when is your next trip to Freetown? It's a great question, Bello. While we wait for some folks to get in, I can answer that question. So my next trip to Freetown is in the next month or two. I'm still planning the trip, but it's within the next month or two is my next trip to Freetown. We'll be back in Sierra Leone in no time. My folks on TikTok, I've been neglecting TikTok. Haven't been going live on TikTok. Am I even logged in on this computer? On this device? Okay, I am logged in. Yes, I am logged in. Okay, so we're gonna go live. Why not? All right. And what about Ghana? So the question is, what about Ghana? So I'll be going to Sierra Leone and Ghana in the same trip. So within the next 2 months, I'll be going to both. You guys can expect to hear from me. I'll be going to both. Let me just message mi madre and let her know that I am on live, so I can't talk right now. Yep. All right. So what do we got? What do we got for today? So what is the major update that I have for you guys? There's a couple of updates. So I'll start with the first one. And I have hired some more employees, believe it or not. I have hired 2 more people in Nigeria to help me with my platform. So now I have a total of 3 folks who are working on Authentic African. So those 3 folks their responsibilities are split. One person's focusing on posting and community engagement. Another one's focused on editing my long live videos and cutting them into shorter clips. And then another one is focused on news posts and is going to help me with my news posts. So hopefully you guys will be able to see more consistent not just consistent content, but consistent. Wow, my when I was shaving today, slither. More consistent. What's the word I'm looking for? Original content. So you can expect to see more consistent original content. I have 3 employees now, all 3 in Nigeria, and all 3 of them are, you know, are more than capable of doing the work. So I'm excited about that. So that was the major update because obviously I can't do this by myself. I'm posting between 4 and 15 times a day, and at least 4 original posts. There are a lot of collaborations coming in that I'm approving, many of them. So Shaka Bars, for instance, is one of the folks who I'm collaborating with. African Stream is another company that I'm collaborating with. Red Stream is another one. And so these are all people who have really good content about Africa. And, we're sharing our content with both audiences. So in order to keep up with that, because I log into Instagram maybe twice a day, 3 times a day, and I'm only there for like a grand total of about 45 minutes. My personal Instagram use is not the same as most people. I don't use Instagram for fun. I use Instagram more for what we're doing here for business. So, and it's not really business, it's really information, right? Because I'm not generating any income from Instagram at this point. So really, it's just a matter of making sure that I get the information and knowledge to you guys. And on that note, too, because I am bringing on folks, and the platforms don't generate much income, it is all out of pocket. So since I've come to the United States, I came on board with a company as a as an independent contractor or consultant for about a month. Then I came on board full time. So I'm working with them full time, but my days are very much consumed by the work that I do for my full time job. Now that's given me additional income that I can utilize, or I can deploy that capital for hiring folks to help me with this platform. But I need you guys' help. I need your help. Those of you who are watching, and if you feel so inclined, because monetization has been removed from most of the platforms, the only way now that you guys can tip, you guys used to be able to tip me while I'm live or tip on YouTube. That capability is no longer available, at least temporarily unavailable. And so if you guys want to support the platform, you can support by doing a Zelle payment or Cash App. Either Zelle or Cash App, and then PayPal as well. PayPal is another one that I can accept as well. So if you want, you can. Totally up to you. Not a requirement, but if you have it and you want to, we would be happy to receive your donations and tips. Because look, I'm coming out of pocket to pay for all of this stuff, and it's not really generating the income that you might think it does, to have all the people that I have working on what I'm doing. So those were 2 major updates, and then a couple of other updates. So people have been asking me, what am I going to do with this platform? And a couple of lives ago, we talked about. You guys gave me some insight, and then in another one we talked about how that's been going so far. And I will tell you that it seems that the interviews that I've been doing with people are really resonating with you guys. And so either every other week or every week, but at least every other week, we plan to have a guest on that we'll be interviewing, and we'll hear their story, right? Their story about living on the continent of Africa, the good, the bad, the ugly, right? There was some controversy last week for whatever reason when I had Leslie on. There was also controversy when Alita was on. Shaka Bars also as well. And so, but we want to make sure that we bring on folks who are living on the continent or who go back and forth to the continent often, to tell their stories, right? And for you guys to kind of hear from other folks beyond myself what that experience might look like. I think everybody's experience is different. Excuse me. My experience has been interesting, to say the least. But I think, my experience is just my experience, and so what we'd like to do is ensure that you guys get a chance to hear from folks who are not just me, right? Who are not me. Um, I'm trying to get to the channel, and there we go. There we go. So now I can share my screen. So again, quick recap because there's a bunch of new people joining. Number one, hired 2 new people to help with Authentic African brand overall. We're looking at a third person right now for just YouTube, but we got and it's all Nigerians. I've been lucky enough to have met 1 or 2 good folks, and they're introducing me to other folks. And so that is what I've been doing in terms of adding to the team so that you guys can get more consistent, original content on Instagram, YouTube, TikTok, Twitter, Twitch, everywhere. I also have a new job that's actually covering the cost of hiring these new folks, right? Unfortunately, the platforms themselves don't generate enough income for me to hire folks based on the income I generate from the platform. So what I'm doing now is I'm basically just taking funds from my job and using that to pay these employees, right? So that's basically how you guys are able to get the content that you're getting. Is the before it was me doing all the posting and the content, me and one other person. Now I have 3 people involved in that process. Um, all right, so like I said, I wanted to share my screen with you guys so you guys can see. So let's share the entire screen. This could be dangerous. I think we're okay. I think we're okay. All right. So, by the way, we hit 15,000 subs last month. So, thanks to you guys for helping us get to 15,000 subscribers on YouTube. It has been a long journey, 3 plus 3.5 years to get to 15,000. And so, well, 3 years to get to 15,000. And it's all because of you guys. And so, here's what we've been up to. So, as I mentioned to you guys before, we go live a couple of times a week to talk to different people about different things. So this live here is what we have. So we have 15 people watching live on YouTube right now. In terms of obviously the people who end up watching these later on ends up being a lot more. But so we have the story about what was happening in Kenya, the most recent update. If you guys are interested in what's happening across the continent of Africa, outside of Sierra Leone and on my own personal life, then you want to join this live. It's called This Week in Africa, and it's a live that I do with African Stream. This last week, we had 2 African Stream journalists on last Thursday. We had William and we had Inem. Inem was in both Niger and Mali reporting on everything going on with the Alliance of the Sahelian States, or what's also called the AES, and how they're looking to build a federation, actually 1 country at some point. And a really interesting stuff, just seeing what people were feeling on the ground. So so she spoke about that. Then William, of course, he lives in Kenya, and he was involved in the protest there, and pepper sprayed and went through the whole thing. And so he gives some insight as to what that life is like on the ground there in Kenya, and why people are so upset with the Kenyan government and protesting. Right before that, I had Leslie on, and Leslie talked about how she was scammed with land in Ghana, and then she also talked about her plans for the land and what she's doing moving forward, and that was an interesting one. Apparently controversial, as I mentioned. About 10,000 people viewed this one, which was pretty good considering. Then I did a story about child marriage being outlawed in Sierra Leone and just giving the history of that. So that might be an interesting one. I did another update recently, and then I did one about the pro-Palestinian mother being who experienced loss of life due to someone who is South African, a white South African, took her life. And so that story. Prior to that, we had the conversation with Shaka Bars about big tech, child labor, and the mining that's happening in the Congo right now. We had the Dream Killers. I went live with Queen Reiki, Ibrahim, and Admire with Sierra Leoneans Killing It, talking about what it's like to be in a non-traditional career with West African parents. We did a live with Alita on how to get your citizenship in Ghana, how she got her citizenship in Ghana, and what she's doing with her land and all of that. We talked about the South Africa elections. We talked about the coup. There was a coup attempt, as you guys know. And then there's also been an upgrade to the branding, as you guys might have noticed. As of the last week or so, we're no longer, the branding has changed. No more italicized, whatever the name of this font is. My font and the branding will more closely align and match with the font and the branding on Instagram. So if we go over to Instagram and take a look at what some of that branding looks like, we've made some major updates to the branding. So let me get to my profile quickly. And so, that's another major update. So if you see a post like this, know it's mine. It's nobody else's. So you can see the branding here, this Africa vlog here, the first post you see here. You see the branding here, Ibrahim Traore, and what he's speaking to with African leader, as an African leader, and receiving French aid. Like button. And then I have these videos here, and then we have one more post that'll be going live today. But so this will give you an idea. So this is what the branding looks like, right? So we're using a different font now. So that's what the branding should look like. And it kind of is more in line with some of the other posts that I'm sharing or, I'm being collaborated with. Yeah. Anyway, so, and you can see kind of what the other branding looks like. So my branding is more in line with that. It's more of a news story. I think previously the branding I had looked a little bit more like a blog, like even like a those kind of blogs that are not necessarily in line with like journalistic news and integrity. I wanted to make sure that my branding did match with that. And so you can see that you see these are the branding of other folks who I'm working with, and then of course you see my branding here, and then you'll see the clips from the different lives that we do here, and so you can check those out. Cool. So that is everything for now. There's some comments. Let me take some of these comments. Say we'll definitely support. Thanks, Watchdog. I appreciate it. Catherine Smith says, "Hey Joe, checking in from Houston, Texas. We just hit by Hurricane Beryl. Is it Beryl? Man, sorry. Good to hear your updates. Keep Houston in your thoughts and prayers. No power for millions of people." I'm really sorry to hear that. I was supposed to go live on Sunday with Admire, and she was saying she went through the same thing. Yeah, it's been really bad over there. So yeah, you're definitely in our thoughts and in our minds. Royal Bloodline says, "Happy Monday, Joe. Happy Monday, Royal Bloodline." Watchdog says, "Yo, guys, hit that like button." Yes, hit that like button, hit that subscribe button, hit the notification bell so you're notified every time a new video comes out. All right, and so this is the part of the program we ask, what questions do you have for me? That we didn't want to spend too much time talking about, the interviews that I've done and the lives that I've done. I just wanted to make sure that you guys know that those are there. So if you want to know what other people's perspectives are, you can always go back and check those out. Very, very insightful, interesting, and insightful. I think you'll find them very interesting. Got some interesting stories, to say the least, for sure. But I definitely recommend you guys check those out. But if you guys don't have any questions, really, then we may have to bring the live to a close. I have a ton of work that I have to catch up on, and so much work, so little time. So if you don't have any specific questions for me right now, then we may bring this thing to a close. Let's see if there's any questions. I'll give another minute or so, see if there's any more questions. But yeah. Yeah. So what else can I tell you guys? So the new job has been going great. Um, you know, the new job has been going great. We finally, uh, I finally work for a company that's minority owned in the states, that we align on a lot of things socially, politically, um, how we do business. So really interesting stuff, and I'll tell you more about that later. So Watchdog says I should check out Shanorba, or Siba, as many people call him. He is the Minister of Information and Civic Engagement, or MOICE is what like the acronym spells. I've actually been in touch with him previously. What specifically do you, when you say I should check him out, are you saying that I should try to get him on the live and talk to him, or what specifically do you mean, Watchdog? I'm interested to hear what you're thinking. I know he's been really doing a good job of trying to communicate the government's message to the people in at home and abroad in Sierra Leone, and so um, I've been keeping up with his press releases and such over the last year or so. So Catherine Smith is asking, am I still based in NYC? I am. The apartment I'm in right now, fun fact for those of you who aren't aware, we just had our 20-year anniversary of moving in here. June 15th, 2020, sorry, 2004 was the date that we moved into this apartment. And so it's crazy to come full circle after living in so many different places. 4 years in Los Angeles, 1 year here during 2020, sort of in and out of here. Actually, I didn't spend 1 year here. I spent about 6 months here in 2020 in New York. Maybe less than 6 months, but about that. And then I came back a couple times in 2022, but now I'm here, and it's been interesting to be back in New York City, full time. But my next trip is going to be at the end of this quarter, and then we have another one at the end of Q4 to West Africa. I'll also be going to Kenya at the end of this year too. I just need to check in on all the details of that trip. But I am really looking forward to heading back to the continent. It's time. It's time for me to go back over there for sure. I have meetings to have, and I'm excited to see some progress on the house project as well. Any other questions, thoughts, questions before we move on? Let's see. Any questions? I think that's basically it. So I left it up to you guys to ask me any more questions. Okay, here we go. There's some stuff. Oh, Watchdog is saying, yeah, he's actually a journalist who investigated the Ebola outbreak. Check him out. Shanor Alphabet. Okay, so this is not the same person. This is someone different, I'm thinking. I don't think this is the Minister of Information. If it's is this the same person? Because I know Siba had a whole different business. Let's try it. Now I'm looking up. I'm looking this guy up. The Ebola outbreak in West Africa, corporate gangsters, multinationals, and rogue politicians. Okay, this is a book that he wrote. Wow. Okay, interesting. Okay, well, I'll check him out. Um, yeah, I'll definitely look into the guy for sure. You guys recommend to look into some people. I'll definitely do that. You said, I think he's head of Africanist Press. Lots of information about corruption as well. Okay, I'll check him out. Definitely different from the person I was thinking about, for sure. Um, Catherine Smith says, "How has returning back to the U.S. been for you emotionally?" Emotionally, that's an interesting question. Um, I would say overall, it's been a mixed bag of emotions. Let's say, obviously, I miss my people back home. You guys know who you are, my crew. But many of them also had left. We had a bunch of people in the last 2 years leave Sierra Leone, people who I'd been close with, and people who had been instrumental in me moving to Sierra Leone from Ghana. And many of them had to make decisions for their careers and their lives, and they moved on. So yeah, I mean, I would say it's been a big mixed bag of emotions. I miss people back home. It's also been interesting to, income has increased, of course, since living here, and being able to invest those funds properly into, what I've been doing back home, and accelerate some things that have been taking a little bit longer previously. And I think that, outside of that, it's been overall a positive experience. But there's certain things about living in the United States that I'm not a fan of. In particular, political discussions here. Things that are happening with the Supreme Court in these United States, things like that. It's not a fan. But there are other things about being in the United States that you will find to be make life a little bit simpler. Ghana had a lot of these solutions, but Sierra Leone did not. So when ordering food, for example, I'm going to order dinner in a bit, and I have a multitude of options and vegan options. And obviously that's not something I had when I was in Sierra Leone. I'd have to go find my food because many of the restaurants that I would order from didn't have delivery service, because just logistics weren't a thing that infrastructurally there. Well, yeah, so I would say it's a mixed bag of emotions, a little bit of everything for sure. So Catherine says, Joe, my dad is a disabled veteran and is in a veteran's home in Houston. His nurse is Howard Stinson from Sierra Leone, Freetown. She knows your sister. Howard is so excited that I follow you. Okay, nice. So Howard knows my sister. Okay, she lives in Houston. She knows my dad's first daughter in America, which is a specific distinction that I'm making. So yeah, my sister Zainab, yeah, who lives in H Town. Yeah, for sure. That's dope. It's a small world. It's a small world. Um, are people in Sierra Leone making Chinese chiefs like they do in Ghana? No, not yet. I hope not. There was a Caucasian chief though that I heard of. So they did make a Caucasian chief once. I did hear about that. Watchdog. Oh, so that was Tim Black's question, by the way. Watchdog says, "Do you know anything about the Idris Alba City project?" I do know a bit about it. So I interviewed Shaka Stevens, who's the grandson of the former president of Sierra Leone, Shaka Stevens. He was throwing the ball in parties. And so if you just want to see like his explanation of the Chevrolet Island project, and how it came to be and how he pitched Idris Elba on it, that's on my page. I interviewed him a little over 2 years ago. And so he was still kind of in the process of raising funds. But you could check that out on my page. The interview's there. There's clips from it. And then I've also posted that they've had several updates since then in terms of like partnerships that they've done. So we'll see how it goes. So Tim Black says, I don't understand what's holding African countries back. The Koreans and Chinese great strides at World War II, in the Korean War. I don't understand what's holding African countries back. The Koreans and Chinese, I guess, made great strides at the end of World War II and the Korean War, I guess is what you're trying to say. I'm not sure. I feel like there's some context missing there, Tim. Um, but what's holding Africa back is a great question. There's a couple of different things holding Africa back. I think, there are some people that will say that Africa should not blame the colonial powers for where Africa is, because they'll say countries like Singapore, other countries have done well despite having been colonies of Europe. And I will say, yeah, I mean, but they also have countries in their surrounding regions that are also doing well. And in a lot of cases, that allows people to go back and forth and bring that wealth back and continue to build your country, right? Um, I don't think the continent of Africa has had that necessarily in terms of proximity. Egypt, I think, has benefited from that because Egypt is, connected to technically the Middle East, and so there's been a lot of like inter-country trade and things happening there. Obviously, the Egypt is connected to Palestine and then connected to Israel, and then everything into Jordan and all of the Middle East. Right, you could just go right into the Middle East through land from Egypt. And so what I've seen is, certain countries have been able to elevate and expand and grow and benefit from proximity to other countries that have been in those same positions. I think Africa's a bit behind, one, because of that, and two, because what's different about the continent of Africa since many of these wars is the wealth of Africa since the transatlantic slave trade has lived elsewhere. So if you think about other countries who have their own exports and build their own things, like Korea is a great example. Korea makes cars, which is excellent. They make cars, a number of different things, right? Samsung is in South Korea. I mean, there's a number of different companies that we're all familiar with that do really well coming out of South Korea, for example. But South Korea also has the United States backing in terms of militarily. And they also are a sovereign country without anyone else utilizing, 90 something percent of their natural resources. The most, when I went live with Shaka Bars, it was a shocking fact, but true, that the Democratic Republic of Congo is two things at exactly the same time. One of the poorest countries in the world, at the same time, it's one of the richest countries in the world. Because almost over 50% of all the devices that we use, everything that has a lithium ion battery, that has cobalt, coltan, a number of different minerals in them, these devices, the device I'm talking to you on, you know, most devices are utilized, even this watch. This watch here has a lithium ion battery in it. And that battery derives its materials from the Congo, right? And so the continent of Africa is very big on crude raw materials. It gets refined elsewhere and gets sold back to Africa, right? So, there are many people around the continent of Africa walking around with Android and iPhones and refrigerators and all these different things where the materials that were utilized to make those in Europe and in Asia came from the Congo. And that's just the sad truth about the continent of Africa. So to answer that question, it's a much more complicated thing than looking at, South Korea and saying, they've been successful. I think that you have to kind of look at all of the factors involved. And what you see with Niger, with Mali, and with Burkina Faso is by kicking out the colonists and changing their relationship with them. They are now, and they're going from privatized mining in a lot of cases to um, making it public goods and government owned. Now, some people might say that that's a bad thing, but I think if you want if you have a good government and that good government is here to work on new initiatives and needs cash to do so, it would be great if it was out of the natural resources coming out of the ground from that country instead of using it to build their wealth, right? And so I think it's important to see how the Sahel states have been responding and see over the next 10 to 15 years how they become powerhouses because they've decided that they are no longer going to trade natural resources for a little bit of aid that they're getting. All right. Why do Tim Black says, why do Africans make such bad deals for the raw materials? Because the people who are making the deals are getting the cash themselves. The person who's actually administering the deal is getting it cash themselves, and it's a great deal for their own personal pockets. Not so great for the country as a whole. I think a lot of times, I was watching a video about a woman who was doing international trade, and she had talked about how I think she was Nigerian, but was in the UK or in the US. And I remember her saying that her boss used to say, I love going to Africa. We always get the deal we want. Every time we go to a country or a company in Africa, we always get the deal we want. They don't negotiate. They just give us whatever we ask for. So easy. So it's unfortunate, but that does happen in a lot of cases. Now, I think if people start following the example of the Sahel states, the AES, I think that's less likely to happen moving forward. Jerry Campbell says, what's good, Joe? Back in the city from the look of things, you are too. Yes, I am. I am back in Brooklyn, New York. For those of you who've been following for a while, I went live about 3 or 4 times in 2022 from this very location. And that was when I was here in New York visiting. That was in July and in, I think, October of 2022. So yes, we're back. And here I am. Mariama says, all people of African descent are for the most part in the same situation. No fair trade, colonial mindsets, self-hate and tribalism, greed, etc. We as a people are divided about so many minor issues. She goes on to say that we can't build a nation or a continent. Also, it's very intentional how Africa is sabotaged by the West. Yeah, I mean, look, there's a lot of conversations about that going on right now. Godfrey was talking about, was it Godfrey? Yeah, he was talking about some event that somebody he was talking to. They had mentioned that they had gone to China and talked about how Black people have so much power, but we can't organize. And this guy was a head of a crime syndicate. And it's funny because it's like, we can't even organize crime. It's like, every other major country has these crime syndicates that, at some point go legit. You have folks like, for instance, you have the Italian mob, the Russian mob, where, when they first came to these United States, they were mostly operating in, the illicit markets and alcohol, etc. Eventually, they started, that next generation started going to law school and becoming politicians, like the Kennedys, for instance. They're Italian. Yeah, but anyway. But my point is, what happened over time was they began to move into legitimate spaces. You see that very few and far between in our space, and like I said, we just don't have much organization as a collective. And so that's the goal with this platform, right? Is to bring people together and to have people who are more organized and think about these things. You guys communicate with each other in the comments, and you guys meet up and talk outside of here. I'd like to start doing meetups in person now that I'm here. Eventually. We will get people together and we'll have those conversations. Tim Black says, please hit that like button, everybody. Watchdog says, this reminds me of an article on BlackRock. Yeah, BlackRock's an interesting company too. Catherine Smith says, Joe, can you please do a video about how Africans feel about Black Americans and the stereotypes surrounding Black Americans that some Africans may have? Yeah, I mean, I can work on something like that. I mean, I've definitely had some different conversations with different people. It depends on what generation and who they are. I do think there's we're bridging the gap though. It's not as much of a divide as it might have been previously from what I'm seeing in my conversations. I think a lot of people, especially since the pandemic and since the whole thing with, let's say with George Floyd, right? There's been a little bit more solidarity, and you see even on the other side with what's happening in Sudan and in the Congo, people who haven't been to the continent are talking about it. Watchdog says, we're seeing a general trend around the world of resource nationalism with governments that are short of tax revenue, whether it's personal taxation levels or extending into corporate or otherwise. Yeah, I mean, I'm not always a fan of nationalizing everything, but it depends on the circumstance and the situation. I, for example, don't necessarily love the idea of dictators and one person in power for an extended period of time, but some instances require it in order to maximize its, their the potential of a country. Tim Black says, I'm not sure if Africa is sabotaged by the West. I saw African young lady talking about how the country was run better under white rule, forgetting that she wouldn't be able to live outside of a township. Yeah, I mean, so yes. So there was a way of life before colonial rule. Then when colonial rule came in, they started making things more comfortable for them and the people who were going to be staying in those countries locally. And in some cases, they did, start, post-secondary institutions, sometimes job training programs, things like that. Eventually built some roads, etc. But there was a lot of indoctrination, religion-wise, and like I'm talking post-slavery, religion-wise, and just in terms of the belief systems of, the benefits of those countries, period. And so, but I don't know if these countries are better off because of it, because basically they came, they did the thing, and then they got out of there, but still own a lot of the businesses that are in the country, as I mentioned before. And so they may not be state owned by England or France, but many of them are owned by folks who are from those places. And then in the case of the Sahel region, especially in Niger, we reported on this a couple of months back, maybe 6 months back. It was found that billions of dollars were taken, and less than a quarter of that or half of that gets sent back in the form of aid. And prior to this new junta taking over, it was considered like a great thing. Like, oh, look at all this aid we're getting, not realizing that so many resources were being extracted from the country. People were just excited about the $1 billion in aid, but $4 billion or $2 billion is being extracted from the country every year. So there's that. All right, guys. What's Jerry Campbell saying? Jerry's saying, all legitimate question observations about trade, but what's been overlooked is we are a unique group grappling with a global political economic system designed to position us right where we are. There you go. There you go. All right, guys. I know that a lot of people are joining on right now as we speak. And as you guys are joining, I think we are leaving. But definitely go back and watch the live. Okay, there's more comments. Let's read the comments. Let's keep reading the comments. I'll keep them going. So you're right about Africans and Black Americans coming together more. I'm a pastor who provides for people who in need in Houston, Ghana, and other countries and cities. I am also an IT college professor. Nice. So Jerry Campbell says, what's needed is a group equally sophisticated response. Yes, I do think that that is correct. We need a group. We definitely need a group. We need groups and a group, and that's the goal to get us there. We will get there. It's just going to take platforms like this, the people who follow these platforms, to get together and help us do that. All right, guys, we're going to bring this thing to a close. I need to finish up some work. I know I started late and I'm ending early, but there is a ton of work that I need to do and I need to finish up. And we are not going live tomorrow, but I will be live with Sierra Leoneans Killing It on Sunday, this coming Sunday. And then the following week, we won't be live. We won't be going live on on This Week in Africa either. So 2 weeks, no, we're not going live with This Week in Africa, but we are going live with Exposing Sierra Leone and Admire and the Sierra Leoneans Killing It crew on Sunday. And then we'll see if I'm going to go live next week. I have to go on a college tour for my nephew, so I'm not sure I'll be available. All right, so just a couple things. Not to say individuals, administrations can't make small change, but not for the collective. Agreed. Catherine Smith says, continuation. As a result of my working with students from several African countries, I get to hear both perspectives from African college students and Black students. That'll be interesting. Watchdog says, yo, check out Shanar Alpha Bob. Very important info. Please get him sometime in the future. I heard you loud and clear. And with that, guys, thanks for watching. I will see you all on the next video.